All right, let's jump right into today's deep dive.
Sounds good.
We're tackling Brazilian insurance law.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, using some Portuguese legal dictionaries and a few study guides,
Okay.
to uncover just how this whole system works.
All right.
I know it might not sound like the most riveting topic at first glance,
All right.
but trust me,
Okay.
we're going to unearth some surprising facts
Okay.
and hopefully make it relevant
Yeah.
to anyone who's ever wondered,
Yeah.
about how different legal systems
Yeah.
create these financial safety nets for people.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating area, and I think it's more relevant than a lot of people might realize.
Right.
Whether you're thinking about doing business in Brazil or you're just curious about how different countries handle financial security.
Yeah.
Understanding their insurance laws can give you a really unique perspective
Absolutely.
on their culture and their approach to risk.
Exactly.
It's a window into how they think about protecting people and businesses.
For sure. So we've got a couple of main sources here.
Right.
First up is the Dicionário de Seguros, Vocabulário Conceituado de Seguros.
Okay.
Think of it like our insurance encyclopedia.
Right.
And then we've got some study guides too.
Okay.
Direito do Seguro. And a few from Top Invest.
Okay.
Those give us a peek into how professionals in the industry think about these concepts.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was actually flipping through the dictionary earlier.
Oh, yeah.
And I came across this term that immediately grabbed my attention.
Okay.
Abalroação. Yeah.
A Balroa sound.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I know, it sounds pretty dramatic, right?
It does, yeah.
Oh. Turns out it refers to a collision between ships.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, which makes sense considering Brazil's got that massive coastline. And, maritime commerce is a big deal there.
Right, right.
So I'm figuring this term must be pretty crucial for maritime insurance policies, right?
It is, yeah. It's a key concept when you're dealing with ships and potential accidents at sea. But it's not just about any collision, though there are nuances.
Okay.
The dictionary specifies that it only covers collisions that are fortuitous,
Fortuitous.
meaning accidental.
Oh, I see.
If it's intentional, that's a different story.
Ah, so intentional collisions wouldn't be covered.
No, those are referred to as culposa,
Culposa.
and they fall outside the scope of what Abalroação covers.
So that's where the whole precision of legal language becomes really important.
It is, yeah.
Right. One word can make all the difference.
Absolutely.
Especially when you're talking about contracts and policies.
It's all about avoiding ambiguity, making sure everyone understands exactly what's covered and what's not.
Makes sense.
So you can imagine how carefully they have to word these insurance contracts in Brazil.
Yeah, to avoid any loopholes or misinterpretations.
Exactly.
It's like every term has a specific legal weight.
It does.
It's not just about understanding the dictionary definition.
Right.
It's about seeing how those concepts are applied in, real-world situations.
Exactly. You have to look at the broader legal context.
Right. And speaking of real-world scenarios, the dictionary also mentioned this concept of abandono.
Abandono, yeah.
Which seems to give the insured the right to, abandon damaged property.
Okay.
But still claim full payment.
Right.
Is that really as straightforward as it sounds?
Well, not exactly. It's
Right.
not like you can just walk away from a car with a scratch on it
Right.
and say, okay, I'm abandoning this, pay me up.
Okay, so it's a bit more complicated than that.
It is.
All right, so, in what situations would abandono actually apply?
It usually comes into play when the damaged property is considered a total loss,
Okay.
like beyond repair.
Ah, I see.
It's a legal process, and it has to follow specific procedures.
Got it.
It's actually more common in maritime insurance,
Oh, interesting.
where, salvaging a wreck may be impossible.
Right.
Or just way too expensive.
So imagine a ship that's completely run aground.
Exactly. Something like that.
Not someone just deciding to ditch their dented fender. Right, exactly.
Okay. So it's a good illustration of how a term that seems simple on the surface can actually have these really complex implications,
It does, yeah.
right? And procedures attached to it.
Absolutely. It's not always what it seems at first glance.
All right. So we're seeing how these specific legal terms play out in maritime insurance. But what about the broader principles that guide insurance law in Brazil as a whole?
Right.
The study guide, Direito do Seguro, really emphasizes this concept of boa fé,
Boa fé.
which translates to good faith.
Okay.
I'm guessing this is pretty important.
It's absolutely fundamental,
Okay.
not just in Brazil,
Okay.
but in insurance law globally.
Really?
Boa-fé means both the insurer and the insured are expected to act honestly and transparently.
Ah, so no hiding pre-existing conditions when you're applying for health insurance.
Exactly.
Or inflating the value of damaged goods when you're filing a claim.
Precisely.
Okay, so honesty is the best policy.
It really is.
Literally.
In this case, yes.
I see what you did there. Well, the study guide even highlights how this Boa-fé principle is deeply embedded in the Brazilian legal system as a whole.
Wow.
It goes back to their 1988 constitution,
Okay.
and it influences everything from contract law to how judges make their rulings.
So it's more than just a concept.
It is, yeah.
It's like a core value that shapes their whole approach to insurance.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting to see how this one principle can have such a wide-reaching impact.
It does. It touches every aspect of the insurance relationship.
On both insurers and the people they insure.
Exactly. Both sides have to act in good faith.
Right. Makes sense.
And if you breach Boa-fé in Brazil, there can be serious consequences.
Oh, like what?
Contracts can be nullified.
Wow.
And there can be penalties.
So it's not just about being ethical, it's a legal requirement.
It is, yeah.
Okay, so we're getting a sense of the legal foundation here.
Right.
Now, let's shift gears a bit and explore the types of insurance that are actually common in Brazil.
Okay.
Our sources mention a pretty wide range.
Yeah, there's a lot of variety.
Some of them are familiar,
Right.
but some are definitely more specific to Brazil's unique context.
Absolutely. That's what makes it so interesting.
For example, we see Seguro Rural,
Seguro Rural.
which means rural insurance.
Okay.
And that seems to play a significant role in a country with such a large agricultural sector.
It does, yeah. Agriculture is a huge part of the Brazilian economy.
Right. But I imagine insuring crops and livestock in a country like Brazil, with all its different climates and potential for natural disasters,
Right.
must be pretty challenging.
It is, yeah. The study guide actually highlights that.
Oh, really?
It talks about how Brazil's geography and weather patterns create a really complex risk environment for agricultural insurance.
Okay, like what kind of risks are we talking about?
Well, you've got everything from droughts in some regions to floods in others,
Wow.
and even the possibility of sudden frosts that can damage crops.
So it's not just about insuring against one specific risk.
No, it's a whole spectrum of unpredictable events,
Right.
which is where the expertise of the insurers comes in. They have to assess all these different risks and figure out appropriate coverage options.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Right. So insurance products have to be really tailored to different industries
They do.
and even different regions within a country like Brazil.
Absolutely. It's all about understanding the specific risks involved.
Okay, so that's Seguro Rural. Now, on a completely different note, we also have Seguro de Riscos Nucleares.
Nuclear risk insurance.
Yeah, which is interesting because it highlights how insurance extends to even like the most specialized
Right.
and potentially hazardous fields.
Absolutely. It shows you the scope of what insurance covers.
Yeah, I mean, nuclear risk insurance, that brings to mind some pretty high stakes scenarios.
It does, yeah.
I'm assuming international agreements and regulations play a big role here.
You're right, they do.
Okay.
The dictionary actually mentions the Vienna Convention,
So interesting.
which sets international standards for liability in case of a nuclear accident.
Right, so it's not just about protecting the power plants themselves.
No, it's much broader than that.
It's about making sure there's a system in place to handle the potential fallout,
Exactly.
literally and figuratively.
Exactly. It's about mitigating the risks on a global scale.
All right, let's bring it back to a level that might feel a bit more relevant to our everyday lives.
Okay.
The dictionary highlights Seguro de Vida en Grupo de Prestamistas.
What's that?
It's life insurance for borrowers.
Okay.
Is that a common thing in Brazil?
It is, yeah, very common.
Really?
It's often linked to loans,
Like what kind of loans?
mortgages especially, and personal loans.
Okay, so how does it work?
Basically, it ensures that the debt is covered if the borrower passes away.
Ah,
So it protects the lender's investment,
right.
and it also protects the borrower's family from inheriting a huge financial burden.
So it's like a safety net for both sides of the lending equation.
Exactly. It benefits everyone involved.
It also shows how life insurance isn't just about individual protection, right?
Right.
It plays a role in the broader financial system
It does, yeah.
by facilitating lending and, promoting economic stability.
Exactly.
Okay, one last term from the dictionary that caught my eye. Solvencia II.
Solvencia II.
It sounds pretty technical.
It is a bit technical, but it's really important.
Okay, so what is it?
It's a set of upcoming regulations
Okay.
for the insurance industry.
Just in Brazil?
Not just in Brazil, actually,
Oh.
it's global.
Wow.
It's aimed at strengthening the financial stability of insurance companies worldwide.
So making sure they can actually pay out on claims when things go wrong.
Exactly.
Even if a lot of claims happen all at once.
Precisely. It's about protecting consumers
Okay.
by making sure the insurance companies are financially sound.
So safeguarding the safety net itself.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
I like that.
It's about making sure the system itself can handle the unexpected.
And how does Solvencia II plan to do that?
Well, it introduces a risk-based approach to capital requirements.
Meaning?
The more risk an insurer takes on,
Mm-hmm.
the more capital they need to hold in reserve.
Ah, so like a financial cushion that's proportional to the level of risk they're taking.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
It's a way to prevent insolvency.
Right.
And make sure they have the resources to meet their commitments.
Right, to the policyholders.
Exactly. It's all about ensuring they can actually pay out on those claims when they need to.
Okay, this is all starting to paint a picture of a very complex system.
It is, yeah.
Lots of moving parts.
And interconnected, too.
Right, so I'm curious,
Yeah.
what about the body that oversees all of this in Brazil?
Oh, you mean SUSEP?
TUSEP, yeah, that's what I'm seeing in these study guides.
SUSEP stands for Superintendencia de Seguros Privados,
Okay.
which is basically Brazil's insurance regulator.
So they're like the referees of the insurance game,
That's a good way to put it.
making sure everyone's playing by the rule.
Exactly.
All right, so we've got a basic understanding now of the key terms, the
Right.
principles at play,
Yeah.
and who the main players are.
Okay.
Let's keep going with our deep dive and see how all of this comes together in practice.
Sounds good to me. So we're talking about SUSEP?
SUSEP, right, the insurance regulator in Brazil.
Exactly.
It seems like a pretty big job,
It is, yeah.
making sure a whole industry is operating,
Yeah.
fairly and responsibly.
Right. It's a big responsibility.
So what are some of the, key areas they focus on?
One of their primary functions is prudential regulation,
Prudential regulation.
which is all about safeguarding the financial stability of those insurance companies.
Ah.
So they can
okay.
actually meet their obligations to the policyholders.
Right, so making sure they actually have the resources
Yeah.
to pay out on those claims
Yeah, man.
when people need them.
Right. Even if a lot of claims happen all at once.
Right, like a natural disaster or something.
Exactly. They need to be prepared for the unexpected.
Okay, so how does USEP ensure that?
Well, they set what are called capital adequacy requirements,
Okay.
which basically dictate how much money insurers need to hold in reserve.
Ah, so like a financial cushion
Exactly.
to absorb those potential shocks.
Right. It's like a safety net for the safety net.
I like that. A safety net for the safety net.
It's about making sure the system itself is resilient.
It makes sense.
It wouldn't be very reassuring to have insurance
Right.
if the company providing it went bankrupt when you needed them most.
Exactly. What good is insurance if the insurer can't pay?
Right. So that's a major focus for USEP.
Okay, so that's the prudential regulation side of things.
Mhm.
What about consumer protection?
Oh, that's another key area for USEP.
Okay.
That falls under what's called market conduct regulation.
Market conduct regulation.
It's all about preventing unfair or deceptive practices
Okay.
in the way insurance is marketed and sold.
Like what kind of practices?
Well, things like misleading advertising, hidden fees, that sort of thing.
So they're looking out for consumers who might not be
Yeah.
experts in insurance contracts and could be taken advantage of.
Exactly. They want to make sure everything is transparent and fair.
Makes sense.
And they have the authority to investigate companies
Okay.
and even penalize them if they're not playing by the rules.
So they have some real teeth.
They do, yeah. They need to be able to enforce those regulations.
Right, to make sure consumers are protected.
Absolutely.
It's interesting, though. It's not just about policing the industry.
Right. It's not just about enforcement.
It seems like CSEP is also involved in,
Yeah.
promoting financial literacy.
They do a lot of work on that front.
Really?
It's about educating consumers
Okay.
so they can make informed decisions about their insurance needs.
So it's a more proactive approach
It is, yeah.
to consumer protection.
Exactly. They want to empower people
Okay.
to understand insurance and choose the right products for their situation.
Rather than just coming in after the fact.
Right. It's about preventing problems before they arise.
It's interesting to see that kind of approach from a regulator.
It is. It shows they're really thinking about the bigger picture.
Right, not just about rules and enforcement.
Yeah, they're trying to create a healthy and well-functioning market.
Where consumers are informed and protected.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got a good grasp on CSEP's role now
Okay.
as the overseer of the Brazilian insurance market.
Mm-hmm.
Let's dig into some of the specific types of insurance
Right.
that are highlighted in these top invest study guides.
Right.
I'm particularly interested in the challenges of Seguro Rural, rural insurance.
It's a fascinating area.
Given the sheer scale and diversity of Brazil's agricultural sector,
Right. It's a huge undertaking to insure agriculture in a country like Brazil.
the study guide really emphasizes that complexity.
It does.
All the different geographical differences,
Mm.
the range of climates, the unpredictable weather patterns.
It makes it a really challenging landscape to navigate.
So it's not just about insuring against,
Yeah.
one specific risk, like a fire or something.
Right. It's much broader than that.
It's about all sorts of potential threats
Mm.
to crops and livestock.
Everything from droughts to floods to pests, you name it.
And the study guide mentions that one of the biggest challenges
Oh, yeah.
is the lack of comprehensive historical data
Right. That's a major hurdle.
on agricultural losses.
It makes it really hard to assess risk accurately.
Right. If you don't know how often certain events have happened in the past,
Yeah,
it's tough to know what to charge for premiums
exactly.
and what level of coverage to offer.
It's like trying to navigate without a map.
Right. You're flying blind.
In a way, yes.
And then there's the issue of relatively low insurance penetration in those rural areas.
Yeah, that's another challenge.
Meaning a lot of farmers just aren't insured.
Right. A lot of them are operating without that safety net.
Why would that be?
Well, there are a few reasons.
Okay.
Some farmers might not be familiar with the specific products available.
Mm-hmm.
Others might be hesitant because of the cost.
Okay.
Or maybe they just don't trust insurance companies.
So there's a lack of awareness
Yeah.
and maybe some skepticism too.
Right. It's a complex issue.
But it seems like there's a lot of potential for growth
There is, yeah.
in that Seguro rural market.
If those barriers can be overcome, there's a huge opportunity there.
Right. So what needs to happen?
Well, the study guide suggests that education is key,
Okay.
making sure farmers understand the benefits of insurance,
Mm-hmm.
and then developing products that are tailored to their specific needs.
So more customized solutions.
Exactly. It's about building trust and demonstrating the value of insurance.
Right. So farmers can see how it can actually help them manage those risks.
Exactly. It's not just about selling policies. It's about providing solutions.
Makes sense. Now, what about the people working in the agricultural sector?
Oh, good point.
Are there any specific insurance considerations for them?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
The study guide mentions Seguro de Vida do Produtor Rural.
Okay, but what is that?
It's life insurance, specifically for those working in agriculture.
Okay.
Aims to protect their families in case of, death or disability.
Right. Which makes sense considering how physically demanding those jobs can be.
Exactly. It's about providing a safety net for those who are essential to Brazil's agricultural success.
And is that type of insurance usually offered separately?
Sometimes, but it's often linked to credit products,
Oh, interesting.
like agricultural loans.
Okay.
So if the borrower passes away, the loan can still be repaid.
So protects a lender as well.
Exactly. It's a way to manage the risk for both sides.
It's a really smart approach, linking those two elements together.
It is. It shows how insurance can be integrated into specific industries
Right.
to address their unique needs and vulnerabilities.
Okay, now let's jump back to Seguro de Riscos Nucleares.
Nuclear risk insurance, right?
Yeah, it seems like a pretty niche market.
It is. Yeah, a very specialized field.
But as we saw with the Vienna Convention,
Mm-hmm.
international cooperation is crucial here.
Absolutely. It's a global issue.
The potential consequences of a nuclear accident
Right.
are so huge that it requires a coordinated approach.
Exactly. It's not something any one country can handle on its own.
So it's not just about ensuring the power plants.
No, it's much bigger than that.
It's about managing the potential consequences
Right.
for the environment, the surrounding communities.
It's about protecting people and the planet.
And it shows how insurance can play a role in,
Yeah.
facilitating technological advancement.
It does. It provides a framework for managing the risks involved.
Right, because without that safety net,
Mm-hmm.
it might be too risky to pursue certain technologies.
Exactly. Insurance can help to mitigate those risks and make progress possible.
Okay, let's bring it back to something a bit more familiar now.
Right.
We talked about Seguro de Vida en Grupo de Prestamistas earlier.
Life insurance for borrowers, right?
Yeah, I imagine a lot of people listening have probably encountered that.
It's very common, especially when taking out a loan.
Right, like a mortgage or personal loan.
Exactly.
And it makes sense. It protects both the lender and the borrower's family.
It does. It ensures the debt is covered even if the borrower passes away.
So it's a way for lenders to protect their investments and for borrowers to avoid burdening their families with that debt.
Exactly. It provides peace of mind for everyone involved.
But I noticed that the study guide also mentions some potential consumer protection concerns
Oh, right.
related to this type of insurance.
Yeah, there are some things to watch out for.
What should borrowers be aware of?
Well, the study guide cautions against policies that might contain what are called abusive clauses.
Abusive clauses.
Things like unfair exclusions or limitations on the coverage.
So it's not enough to just assume that having this type of insurance is automatically good?
No, you have to read the fine print.
Right. Borrowers need to carefully review the terms and conditions
Exactly. Make sure they understand what's covered and what's not.
to make sure they're actually getting adequate protection.
Right. It's about being informed and making sure you're getting what you pay for.
The study guide also mentions, like, misleading sales practices.
Yeah, that's another concern.
So borrowers should be wary of,
Mm-hmm.
aggressive tactics or promises that sound too good to be true.
Exactly. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Right. Always a good rule of thumb.
It is.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to insurance. So it seems like USEP has a big job here
They do, yeah.
in monitoring this sector and making sure consumers aren't being taken advantage of.
Right. They need to be vigilant.
Their role in consumer education is really important.
It is, yeah.
Empowering borrowers to understand their rights.
Exactly. And to make informed choices.
Okay, let's dive into Solvencia test now.
Solvencia test. All right.
It sounds like this is going to be a big deal for the insurance industry.
It is, yeah. A major regulatory overhaul.
And it's been in development for a while now. It has. Years in the making.
And it's not just a Brazilian thing.
No, it's a global initiative.
Wow. So what's the driving force behind this?
The main goal is to strengthen the financial resilience of insurance companies
Okay.
and to enhance the protection of policyholders.
So making sure that insurers are well equipped to weather financial storms and meet their obligations.
Right, even in extreme scenarios.
It's like a stress test for the industry.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
And how does Solvencia II actually plan to achieve that?
Well, one of the key elements is a risk-based approach to capital requirements.
Okay, so the riskier your activities, the more capital you need to hold in reserve.
Exactly. It's about making sure the safety net is proportional to the risk.
It makes sense.
The bigger the potential for things to go wrong, the bigger your cushion needs to be.
Right. And Solvencia II goes beyond just capital adequacy, right?
It does. It's a much broader framework.
Okay, so what else is involved?
Well, it introduces a three-pillar system of supervision.
3 pillars.
Yeah, each pillar focuses on a different aspect.
Okay, break it down for me.
The first pillar is all about quantitative requirements.
Quantitative, so like numbers.
Exactly, things like those capital adequacy rules we talked about.
Okay.
The second pillar shifts the focus to qualitative elements.
Qualitative.
Yeah, things like risk management, good governance practices within the insurance company.
So it's not just about having the money
No, it's about having the right systems and strategies in place.
to manage those risks effectively.
Well, exactly.
And what about the third pillar?
The third pillar is all about transparency and disclosure.
Okay.
It aims to make insurance companies more accountable
How so?
by requiring them to publicly report on their financial health and risk management practices.
So everyone can see how they're doing.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about increasing transparency
Yeah.
and accountability.
So Solvencia II is really bringing a whole new level of rigor to the industry,
It is, yeah, it's a major shift.
and it's going to have a big impact on how insurers operate
Absolutely, it's going to change the game.
and on the products they offer.
Right. And potentially on the prices consumers pay as well.
It's all about raising the bar for financial stability.
And consumer protection.
Right. Those are the 2 key goals.
Exactly. It's about making sure the insurance system is strong and reliable for everyone involved.
Okay, we've talked a lot about institutions and regulations, but what about the individuals who actually connect consumers with insurance products?
Oh, you mean insurance brokers?
Yeah, what role do they play in Brazil?
They play a crucial role, actually.
Okay.
Brazilian law mandates that insurance has to be sold through licensed brokers.
Really?
Yeah, you can't just buy insurance directly from the company.
So brokers act as intermediaries
Exactly.
between the insurers and the consumers.
They're the ones who guide consumers through the process,
Okay.
assess their needs, recommend products, explain the contracts.
So they need to have a pretty deep understanding of like
It do?
all the different insurance products out there,
Mhm.
and also their clients' individual situations.
Absolutely. It's a specialized role.
And it sounds like it's a regulated profession.
It is, yeah. To become a licensed broker in Brazil,
Mm-hmm.
you need to meet certain educational requirements,
Okay.
pass an exam, and register with SCEP.
So there's a lot of oversight.
There is. It's important to make sure those brokers are qualified and trustworthy.
Right, because you're essentially trusting them with your financial well-being.
Exactly. It's a big responsibility.
And this requirement for brokers, it kind of reflects a broader cultural emphasis on, like,
Yeah.
personal relationships in business.
It does. Brazilians often prefer to work with people they know and trust.
Right, so having that trusted advisor
Mm-hmm.
to help you navigate the complexities of insurance.
It's a valuable service, especially in a market as complex as Brazil's.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here,
We have, yeah.
from USIP's regulatory role
Right.
to the challenges of rural insurance and the
Uh-huh.
impact of Solvencia II.
It's been a fascinating deep dive into the Brazilian insurance market.
It really has. It's a complex system.
It is, but it's also really
There's a
interesting
lot of moving parts.
and constantly evolving.
Right. So let's move on now and
Okay.
explore some of the broader trends
Right?
that are shaping the future of insurance in Brazil.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so we've spent a good amount of time now getting into the nitty-gritty
Yeah.
of the Brazilian insurance market,
Mm-hmm.
the laws, the regulators, the different types of insurance.
Right. We've covered a lot of ground.
But I think it would be good to take a step back now
Okay.
and look at, like, the bigger picture.
Yeah, the broader trends.
Right. What's shaping the future of insurance in Brazil?
Absolutely, because like any industry, insurance is constantly evolving.
For sure.
There are always new challenges and opportunities emerging.
Right. So what are some of the big forces at play here?
Well, one that's impossible to ignore is technology.
Technology, yeah, it's transforming pretty much everything these days.
It is. And the insurance industry is no exception.
Right. Everything's going digital.
Exactly. And that's having a profound impact on how insurance works.
The study guides actually highlight that.
They do. They talk about how technology is reshaping practically every aspect of the business.
So how's that playing out?
Well, on the consumer side,
Mm-hmm.
it's all about convenience and accessibility.
Okay, so things like online platforms,
Right.
mobile apps.
Yeah, those are becoming increasingly important.
Making it easier to, like,
Hmm.
compare different insurance products,
Yeah.
manage your policies, file claims.
All from your phone or computer.
Right. So much easier than the old way of doing things.
It is. It's a much more user-friendly experience.
And what about from the insurer's perspective?
Well, for them, technology is opening up exciting new possibilities.
Oh, like what?
Things like data analytics
Okay.
and automation.
Ah, so they can leverage all that data.
Exactly. They can collect vast amounts of information
Mm-hmm.
and use it to create more accurate risk profiles, personalize insurance offerings,
Okay.
and streamline their operations.
So it's about efficiency.
Yeah, and also about better decision-making.
Right, because the more data you have,
Right.
the better you can understand the risks involved.
Exactly. It allows for a much more sophisticated approach to insurance.
So it seems like technology is creating a win-win situation here,
It is in many ways.
making things easier and more efficient.
For both consumers and insurers.
But I imagine there are also challenges.
Oh, there are definitely challenges.
What are some of the biggest ones?
Well, cybersecurity is a major concern.
Cybersecurity, right? Because as insurers become more reliant on technology,
Yeah.
they also become more vulnerable.
Absolutely. They're collecting a lot of sensitive data,
Mm-hmm.
which makes them a target for cyber attacks.
A data breach could be devastating.
It could, yeah, both for the company and for its customers.
So cybersecurity is something they have to take very seriously.
They do. It's an ongoing challenge.
And then there's the issue of keeping regulations up to date.
Oh, yeah, that's a constant struggle.
Technology is moving so fast.
It is. It's hard for regulations to keep pace.
Right, because the laws were written for a different era.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
now they have to adapt to this rapidly evolving digital landscape.
So SISEP has a big role to play here,
They do. They need to make sure the regulations are still relevant and effective.
while also fostering innovation.
Right. It's a delicate balancing act.
Okay, so that's technology.
Mhm.
What other trends are shaping the Brazilian insurance landscape?
Another significant factor is the growth of the middle class.
Oh, interesting.
As more Brazilians move into higher income brackets,
Mhm.
they have more disposable income
Right.
and a greater need for insurance.
It makes sense as people accumulate more assets,
Exactly. They want to protect what they've worked hard for.
their homes, their cars.
Right. And also their families.
So they're looking for ways to mitigate financial risks.
Absolutely. Insurance becomes more of a priority.
And this growing middle class is driving demand for a wider range of insurance products, right?
It is. They're looking for more sophisticated solutions.
Not just the basic policies.
Right. They want coverage that's tailored to their specific needs and lifestyle.
So the insurance industry has to adapt.
It does. It has to understand the evolving needs of this new generation of consumers.
And develop products that meet those needs.
Exactly. It's not a one-size-fits-all market anymore.
And speaking of new generations,
Yeah.
we can't forget about millennials and Gen Z.
Oh, right. The digital natives?
They have very different expectations.
They do. They've grown up in a completely different world.
Right, a world of instant gratification.
Mm-hmm. And on-demand services.
So how's the insurance industry responding to that?
Well, one way is by developing more flexible and customizable products.
Okay, like what?
Things like pay-as-you-go insurance.
Oh, interesting.
So you only pay for what you use.
Ah, that makes sense.
And policies that can be easily adjusted online.
So you can adapt your coverage as your needs change.
Exactly. It's about giving consumers more control.
Right, because their lives are changing more rapidly.
Yeah, and they need insurance that can keep up.
Another trend I've seen is the use of, like, gamification
Right, and social media.
to engage younger audiences.
Exactly. They're trying to make insurance more relatable.
It's about speaking their language.
Yeah, and meeting them where they are.
Right, because traditional insurance can seem a bit, well,
Yeah.
dry and boring.
Exactly. Not exactly exciting for a young person.
So they're trying to make it more fun and engaging.
It's about making insurance relevant to their lives.
Wow, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
We have, yeah.
From the intricacies of Brazilian law
To the impact of technology.
and the changing demographics.
It's been a fascinating exploration.
I think what stands out for me is that insurance isn't just about policies and premiums.
Right, it's much more than that.
It's a reflection of a country's culture, its legal system,
Absolutely.
its economic development.
It touches every aspect of society.
So understanding insurance in a country like Brazil
Yeah.
requires looking beyond the surface.
It does. You have to dig deeper.
It's about recognizing how all these different factors,
The legal principles,
right,
the regulatory oversight, the market dynamics,
even the cultural nuances.
all of that plays a role.
It's a complex tapestry.
It is, but it's also incredibly fascinating.
I think the biggest takeaway for our listeners
Yeah.
is that insurance is more relevant than they might think.
It is. It affects us all in some way.
Whether you're doing business in Brazil,
Or just interested in how different countries manage risk.
this deep dive has hopefully given everyone a better understanding
Hopefully so.
of how the Brazilian insurance system works.
And how it fits into the broader context of their society and their economy.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
Likewise, it's always a good discussion.
And to our listeners,
Yeah,
thank you for joining us on this journey.
we appreciate your curiosity.
Keep exploring, keep learning.
And keep those questions coming.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Until then.